Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today is Warlock Wednesday. Oh my!
I
And
love Warlock
today
Wednesdays.
we are going to be talking about the Eldritch Invocation, Eyes of the Runekeeper.
They're actually just glasses because they're saying you're a nerd. Runekeeper is really. When I say these things are simple, normally I'm talking about like a line or two of text. Try 5 words, possibly shortest feature we've ever read, and I want to say it's a banger, but my lord, it is not. You can read all writing. That
That's
is
it.
I have a question, Bob. And your vast experience playing Dungeons and Dragons and writing about nerds playing Dungeons and Dragons, how often has deciphering ancient cryptic texts actually came to play at the table?
Not as often as it should. I gotta give them credit. This for what they intended. I mean, I think they want the characters to decipher ancient texts, but nobody does it.
Can you explain to me why this isn't attached to Eldritch Sight?
No.
Neither can
Uh,
I. I
but
can't explain to you why
Eldritch
that isn't
Sight
the case.
just does detect magic, right?
Yeah.
Well,
This is
why would it?
about as ribbon a feature as you can get. So ribbons are this
Oh, are
concept.
attached to it. I thought you said. I thought you meant why doesn't Eldritch Sight let you do this? But no.
Oh
All
yeah.
right.
Uh
No, you're absolutely right.
yeah.
That would be fine.
That's would be more than fine. It would make both those slightly better, and this needs to be a lot more than slightly better because most adventures don't involve reading. Most
No.
adventures don't involve, and when they do, normally they want everyone to be engaged. So normally it's just uncommon. Like,
Well, I mean, I can see like you find some Elvish writing or something none of your characters speak. If your DM wants to put a bit of flavor in there, but I mean, then
they just
again,
like
it's just
talk
the
to an elf.
DM just forcing you to be able to use one of your this invocation you picked.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
exactly correct. Yes. This is a feature that you will use whenever your DM goes, oh, you picked that feature? I guess I'm going to have to incorporate that into this game somehow, right? And that's not... I don't want my invocations to be there. I want my invocations to be a lot more consistent. I want them to always be doing something. And this does almost nothing all the time. This is like,
Yeah, if you've
8
got
extra languages, and that's not a real feature. I'm sorry. It's just not.
if you've got a varied party, then you're already collectively going to know a bunch of languages. Um, yeah, I can't see this being useful ever.
Yeah, again, unless
Maybe
your
not
DM's like,
never.
if you're the warlock that's I'm deciphering the ancient texts, I'm delving into the occult, I am going mad slowly, Lovecraft style, right? Minus the weird Lovecraft stuff. You can get to space where Lovecraft is a weird guy. You can get to the space where you are in a game where you're like, all right, we've got a bunch of books and no one can read them but you, and now you get to know what the exposition is for the following plot. And I promise you that wasn't written in the DM's plans up until he found out you had Eyes of the Runekeeper, because no one wants to go on an adventure and go, okay, great, what do we find as to where to go next? And you get a bunch of cryptic books that no one can read and no one has ever been able to read, and now you have to find a warlock to read it. Like, finding the warlock to read it at least can be its own little adventure, but then
Uh, that
saying
could be like
like,
the warlock's introduction to the party.
yeah, sure. No one is actively seeking out that kind of exposition, nor are people typically getting that, right? Like, even in a lot of the modern movies we have that show big fantasy action adventure movies, right? The superhero genre is really close to fantasy adventure in a lot of ways. People inexplicably speak the same language all the time. And the reason they do that is so people can stay engaged and entertained and not have to worry about, oh, why are these people speaking English? Or, oh, why are these people speaking whatever the language it's been translated into, right? There isn't a large amount of fun that we're willing to sell into not understanding something and having to jump through a random barrier to get over it.
Well,
And for that
that's
reason,
one point, but spoken language is one thing. Like having it written is two barriers. That's doubling down on boring.
yep. It's like, the next text you need is buried somewhere in one of these books. And normally what you do is you go, okay, great. I go to the local academy and I spend a long rest, or I spend 3 days downtime pouring through the pages and we find the exposition. And you probably can do that without needing this. You probably can get the dictionary of the language you're going for, the translator book, and you just sit down with your wizards and a bunch of other people with 18 ints, and you'd be like, okay, we're going to translate these things over the course of, our downtime. That seems more reasonable than this, but maybe it's in some specific occult ancient tongue that there's no translation for anymore. If that is ever the case, the only reason that is the case is so your DM can give you something to use this feature for.
Yeah, and even if you do need to do the whole secret text and 3 days of translating and whatever, you're not doing that every weekend.
Nope.
Like this is a feature you might use once a campaign, and it'll be the least fun part of the campaign.
Yeah. I think Eyes of the Runekeeper has no business being its own invocation. I think it is one of the worst invocations, and that is baffling whenever things like Thief of Five Faces exists, right? Like, it is worse than learning a new spell once for a long rest. Like, that is how bad Eyes of the Runekeeper is.
I don't hate that it exists. I think there are some characters that want to play the intellectual,
I 100% agree.
The studious, whatever, the scholar.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that most DMs are going to be equipped to let them enjoy the character they want to play in a satisfying way.
Well, so like the Darkest Dungeon series, the main I don't know if protagonist is ever the right word for what the ancestor is, but the idea is that you have a guy that has delved into secrets and has gone too deep and has kept learning and acquiring occult artifacts and trying to understand the unknown, that he went crazy and horrible ruin came to the world because of it, right? That is a really iconic warlock fantasy, because that character is based on a whole bunch of other extra readings and ideas that have been through Eldritch horror, throughout history, and other genres of horror, right? It's a big element to being a curious dealer with unknown evils, right? And that's the warlock class at its base value. The problem is Eyes of the Runekeeper is all flavor. There's no real game mechanic here that enhances the character in a meaningful way. Again, there are these features called ribbons, where conceptually they are added as features that don't meaningfully empower your character at navigating the game, but give you little fluff elements that say your character can do things that don't really matter, right? So like Storm Sorcerer gets things where they can like change the direction of light breezes. That's more or less useless, but makes sense on a character that, is supposed to be able to control the weather and do the storm things. I think the cosmetic cantrips fit this role to a T, right? Having a druid with druidcraft making little petals and blossoms go behind them as they walk is very druidic, but entirely pointless. This is entirely pointless and should be attached to some other warlock feature as a ribbon. That's where I think this really should be. It is not worth it a whole invocation. If you're a DM with a player that wants to take this, offer it to them for free, because it is that low power.
As a character, you could just say, I could read all writing. And
the DM will go,
if the DM says,
cool.
No, you can't. So, all right, challenge me. What do you got? Well, let me ask you one question. All writing would include magical writing. Is that ever going to make a difference?
So, there are going to be weird moments. I don't actually know how this interacts with illusory script, because both these are features that we've joked about how bad illusory script is in the past, and this is akin to that level of utility, so I see it casts almost never. So in a world where someone illusory scripts something, and they have someone on the other team has Eyes of the Runekeeper, I routinely would let the Eyes of the Runekeeper read both versions of it. I don't know if that's rules as written. I think illusion magic might take precedence over this. I think this just lets you understand sigils and symbols regardless of their origin, regardless of their language, whereas illusory script is physically changing. It's not physically, it's magically imposing into your visual range different ideas and different sigils. So I think maybe not.
That's not what I had in mind. I mean, I don't think read magic isn't a spell anymore, right?
No.
All right. But that's what I was thinking. Like scrolls, you get a scroll full of spells. Can anyone read those spells and know what they are? Or
so I would say how I like to think about it is I can read a book of advanced mathematics from, PhD students. I can literally read what the words say. I don't understand it, but I can read it. That's kind of how I envision spell scrolls working. And I don't think Rise of the Runekeeper doesn't let you understand what you read. It just lets you read it, right? It's more like a Rosetta Stone.
I don't know about that.
does this give you a PhD in mathematics? Like, if you hand a warlock with Eyes of the Runekeeper an advanced astrophysics book and say, read this, they can read it. They may not know what it
Yeah.
means, but they can read it, right?
But if it, all right, so you're saying like if it's written in a different language, I don't speak Dwarven.
Mhm.
I can just read the phonetic pronunciation of these words and I don't know what it means.
I think it translates it into, to me, it translates it into a language that is comprehensible to you, but it doesn't
Right.
necessarily give you the instinctual meaning of this is the high level concepts that may be translated here. I think magic is that level of high level concept, right?
All right, I'm not completely fine. All right, what I'm asking, I'm not asking if you can cast spells from the scrolls. I'm just like saying, all right, if it's just a bunch of like arcane symbols,
Mhm.
can you say, all right, this is a scroll of magic missile or whatever? Can you
So
identify what is on the scroll?
me as a DM, yes. I say
Okay.
that's 100% reasonable. That's going to vary table to table. I don't know if there's good rules written for it somewhere. Viewers at home, if you know if there are good rules written for it, it's probably involving like how the spell scrolls were produced and stuff, which is in the DMG, I imagine. But again, I use magic items almost not at all, unless they're like custom that my players want, or like, oh, this would be really cool. I found these cool items on Pinterest. Here are some weird things that I just made up off of the cuff because I like doing everything myself. All of that is outside the scope of like rules as written spell scrolls. Again, if they've got Eyes of the Runekeeper, that's throwing them a bone. Is letting them figure out what the spell scrolls do.
I'm trying to find something.
Sure.
Oh, but yeah, that's I've exhausted my imagination on this one.
That's fair.
Um,
You pushed real hard, at least for like some good ideas. I think that it is difficult to make this any better than just having functional knowledge of the languages that things are written in across the board, right? I think this is kind of like a comprehend language base all for reading is how I kind of read this. And that's not useful.
well, not useful, and certainly not useful regularly.
Nope. This
Yeah,
will rarely come up.
and yeah, like you said many times, not what we want from an invocation.
No, these are your core pillars of your warlocks. These are some of the most important options you have. You cannot squander them on things like Eyes of the Runekeeper, even though it's really cool. Again, if you're a warlock out there, you'd be like, hey, can we take the Sam said on the internet that these two are really bad. Can we stable them together and then they make kind of a whole invocation? I would say that's probably going to be a good route to approach a DM with. Be like, listen, I get that Eyes of the Runekeeper is kind of dookie, but I also get that Eldritch Sight isn't the best invocation in the world. Can I just like have Eyes of the Runekeeper for flavor attached to Eldritch Sight? Because they kind of go together. And your DM might say no because, you know, it's like, oh, I don't know what all the invocations are, I don't know what their power balance is. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But if they're like a responsible DM that's been DMing for a while and has seen these at the table, I would say yes, and I imagine many others would too. So if it's a flavor thing you like and you want to take it for flavor, ask if you can get that outside of having to spend an invocation on it, because it's not worth an invocation.
All right, shall we dive into the ratings?
1 out of 5, utter trash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely unusable.
100% agree. All right. I wonder. Are we gonna get any blowback on this one, Sam? What do you think?
I can't fathom it, but there are a lot of ones that I couldn't fathom getting blowback for that people vehemently defended. At the
Yeah.
same time, like I said, I would love to hear the most diehard fan of this come out swinging. I would love to know why this is the best, not necessarily the best, but a meaningfully powerful invocation, because I just don't believe it.
Yeah. So let us know what you think in the comments.
Yeah.
We are looking forward to it. That was Eyes of the Runekeeper. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it, a gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.